highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
The suburbs of La Perouse, Little Bay, Malabar, Chifley, Phillip Bay and Matraville occupy the La Perouse Peninsula.
The land was originally inhabited by the Gamigal people.
La Perouse, a French explorer, arrived off the coast of New South Wales on the 24th of January 1788, the same day that Arthur Phillip was moving the first fleet from Botany Bay to Sydney Cove.
British naval officer Philip Gidley King recorded in his journal, "On the morning of the 24th, the greatest astonishment was spread throughout the fleet by the appearance of two ships under French colours. 25th of January. The French ships appeared at the mouth of the harbour, and a boat was immediately sent to them. It was now learnt that these were the Boussole and the Astrolabe, under the conduct of Monsieur La Perouse."
The French stayed at Botany Bay for 6 weeks, building a stockade, an observatory and a garden for fresh vegetables. Father Receveur, a chaplain and naturalist, previously injured by natives in Samoa, died while at Botany Bay. He was buried at Frenchman's Cove. In the 1820s, the Receveur tomb was erected.
In 1825, when French navigator Hyacinth de Bougainville visited Sydney, he commissioned the erection of the La Perouse Monument.
On Bastille Day 1917, it was announced that the government of New South Wales had decided to make a gift to the French people in perpetuity of the piece of land at Botany Bay where La Perouse landed.
The peninsula's location on the northern head of Botany Bay was ideal for communication and defence purposes.
The stone octagonal Macquarie Watchtower, the first building in the area, was completed in 1822. Originally a lookout, it became a customs post, and in 1868 the first La Perouse school. In 1957, a fire gutted the building and caused the death of Mary Donnelly, the caretaker's wife.
Bear Island was mentioned in the journals of Joseph Banks and James Cook. Cook described it as a small bare island. Banks landed on the island to search for shells.
William Bradley, in his journal, A Voyage to New South Wales, notes that in 1788 notice boards were erected on the island to advise visiting ships that the settlement had moved to Port Jackson.
In the 1870s, hostilities between Russia and Britain led to Bear Island being fortified and fitted with heavy guns. The island became a retirement home for war veterans from 1912 until 1963. When handed over to the New South Wales Parks and Wildlife Service, it became a museum and tourist attraction.
Other fortifications were located within the area.
Henry Head Battery, constructed between 1892 and 95, operated until 1910, when the fort became obsolete. The battery, along with 2 gun emplacements and observation posts, was recommissioned for use during the Second World War. Remains of the fortifications can still be seen.
The Henry Head, or Endeavour Lighthouse, was built in 1955 on the northern headland of Botany Bay.
Fort Banks was designed and positioned to protect the approaches to Botany Bay in the event of a seaborne attack during World War II.
Malabar Battery, also known as Boora Point Battery, was a coastal defence battery built during World War II on Malabar Headland.
In 1876, a cable was laid connecting Nelson, New Zealand, to Australia.
The La Perouse cable station was built for telecommunications as well as accommodation and training of telegraphers. The station was completed in 1882. In 1903, the telegraph service was transferred to Yarra Bay House.
The government leased the cable station to the Salvation Army for use as a women's and children's refuge in 1944. It continued operating as a refuge until 1987. The building is now the La Perouse Museum.
The Yarra Bay House cable station closed in 1917 when the cable landing site was moved to Bondi Beach. Between 1917 and the mid-1980s, the house was used for multiple government-run children's homes or schools. In 1984, the deed was given to the La Perouse local Aboriginal Land Council, today the administrative headquarters for the council and a base for community services.
In 1930, the Sydney Receiving Centre of AWA was located on the heights of La Perouse. At that time, it was the most important and largest receiving station in the Southern Hemisphere. Wireless traffic was received from a network of stations throughout the world.
From the early 19th century, the area's market garden supplied vegetables to the Sydney markets. After the 1850s gold rushes, Chinese gradually took over most of these gardens. The gardens at La Perouse remained viable throughout the 20th century. Today, La Perouse Chinese market gardens are heritage listed and operated under a Crown's lands lease.
The Aboriginal community is the most significant and lasting one in La Perouse. By 1885, an Aboriginal reserve had been established in the suburb and a number of missions operated in the area. The original church was moved to the corner of Illaru and Adina Avenues, where it still stands today. Many descendants of the families continue to live within the La Perouse Aboriginal community, where they maintain their cultural connection to the coastal Sydney region.
When regular steam tram services from the city to La Perouse commenced in 1902, they greatly increased the flow of casual visitors. A local Aboriginal artefacts industry developed, producing shellwork, moccasins, boomerangs and other souvenirs. One attraction was the snake handling show. Professor Fox was the first of the famous snake men and set up a tradition which has continued over the years. The Can family name is synonymous with the snake men of La Perouse. George Can reigned at the tram loop from the 1920s. After his death in 1965, the tradition was carried on by his sons.
Electric tram services commenced in 1905. The last tram service in Sydney was from the city to La Perouse on the 25th of February 1961.
In the 1930s depression, many unemployed and dispossessed families moved to the area's gullies and hillsides. By 1931, at least 1,000 people were living in tents, humpies and huts made of everything from driftwood, scrap timber, flattened kerosene tins, corrugated iron, to heshing bags and bedsteads.
Happy Valley was next to Anzac Parade behind Kongwong Beach. The New South Wales Golf Club took over the land in the late 1930s.
Frog Hollow and Hill 60 were two other shanty towns near Yarra Bay.
Post-World War II migrants who were either unemployed or homeless from the severe post-war housing shortage joined Aboriginal people from the south coast at Frog Hollow and Hill 60. These camps were closed in the 1950s and their occupants rehoused in the La Perouse and Matraville areas. The last huts were demolished in the 1960s.
When the New South Wales Golf Club was founded in 1926, it employed Dr. Alistair Mackenzie to design a course. It consisted of 18 holes, 2 of which were beside the Tasman Sea and Botany Bay. Mackenzie stated, "At Sydney, I have made an entirely new course for the New South Wales Golf Club at a place called La Perouse. This presents, I think, more spectacular views than any place I know, with the possible exception of the new Cypress Point Golf Course in California."
Today, much of La Perouse is occupied by the New South Wales Golf Course and Kamei Botany Bay National Park.
The Long Bay area was originally part of a land reserved for the Church and Schools Corporation. The income was intended to support clergy and teachers. In 1866, an attempt was made to create a village. Tenders were called for clearing timber and erecting posts for street signs. This was followed by the sale of allotments in 1869. The suburb was advertised as the village of Brand in 1899, but most people continued to refer to it as Long Bay.
When a tram line was built to the Coast Hospital in 1901, the suburb started to grow. By the early 1900s, the village had two community halls. Anderson's Hall and Picnic Grounds was on the corner of Victoria and Napier Streets. Dudley's Hall was used for a school from 1905 till 1909, when Long Bay Public School opened.
A fountain was erected by the Brand Recreation Ground trustees to commemorate the opening of the Long Bay Public School in November 1909.
An observation school at Long Bay gave students at teachers' colleges the opportunity of observing the approved methods to be adopted when working in charge of a one-teacher's school.
Recreational shooting began at Long Bay in 1855. Used as an active shooting range since the late 1800s, it is believed to be the oldest continually used rifle range in Australia. In 1910, the New South Wales government declared that the land was for military purposes. It was used for musketry practice during World War I. A permanent rifle range site was surveyed in 1919.
The State Reformatory for Women was officially opened in 1909. A tram service was introduced to transport prisoners between Darlinghurst and Long Bay. A special car had a side corridor leading to 6 compartments, each with a capacity for 6 prisoners. It remained in use until replaced by motor vehicles in 1950. The State Penitentiary for Men opened in 1914. Both institutions became part of Long Bay Jail in the 1950s.
The MV Malabar, a Burns Phillip Company passenger and cargo steamer, was shipwrecked in thick fog on rocks at Miranda Point on the northern headland of Long Bay in 1931. The ship was named after Malabar, a region of the Indian state of Kerala, famous as a major spice trade centre.
The suburb of Malabar, named after the wreck, was gazetted in 1933. Prior to this, the suburb was known as either Brand or Long Bay.
In 1950, golfers formed the Civic Golf Club and laid out the first stage of an 18-hole golf course on the cliff top between Long Bay and Little Bay. This became Randwick Golf Club in 1960.
The War Memorial in Bob Clark Memorial Reserve at Malabar was originally located in front of the Malabar Shopping Centre. The 2 cannons, either side of the memorial, date back to the 1800s and were originally located at Coogee. Bob Clark was president, treasurer and life member of the Malabar RSL sub-branch.
The suburb of Little Bay was originally called Yarra Junction. Residents asked for the suburb's name to be changed to save confusion with the same name in Victoria.
An isolation camp for victims of a smallpox epidemic was established at Little Bay in 1881. The Coast Hospital developed from this. Victims of other infectious diseases such as typhoid, bubonic plague, the post-World War I influenza epidemic, measles, whooping cough, diphtheria and poliomyelitis were sent to the coast over several decades. The hospital had isolation wards and self-contained lazarettes for lepers. As medical advances overcame most infectious diseases, the need for a specialised hospital declined.
It became Prince Henry Hospital in 1934, a teaching hospital associated with the University of New South Wales. After closing in 2003, the area was redeveloped into a residential precinct. 19 heritage listed buildings are still standing, one of them housing the Prince Henry Hospital Nursing and Medical Museum, which contains an extensive collection of documents, artefacts and memorabilia.
The isolated nature of the Coast Hospital also led to the establishment of the first complete ambulance service in New South Wales. It was ready at a moment's notice for use in the case of an epidemic of infectious diseases. It performed, in addition to the ordinary services for the Coast Hospital, much useful work for the metropolitan hospitals and asylums for the infirm.
The interdenominational War Memorial Chapel overlooking Little Bay was destroyed by fire in 1981. It was subsequently rebuilt. Outside the chapel are memorial plaques dedicated to former hospital staff.
The hospital's coast cemetery was situated south of Little Bay. Over 2,500 people were buried there. It was taken over by the National Parks and Wildlife Service of New South Wales when the national park was created.
The N.S.W.Golf Golf Club was formed in 1932. While seeking a course for the club, they discovered that Michael Moran had a lease on land to construct a golf course between Prince Henry Hospital and the New South Wales Golf Club. They secured the lease and a course was named St Michael's. 9 holes opened in 1938, with the remaining 9 completed a year later.
Little Bay attracted international attention when artists Christo and Jean-Claude, with about 125 assistants, wrapped part of Little Bay and its cliffs in 93,000 square metres of fabric using 56 kilometres of rope.
The suburb of Matraville was named in honour of James Matra, an American sailor and diplomat, who was a midshipman on James Cook's voyage to Botany Bay in 1770.
Originally swamps and sandhills from the 1830s, market gardening in the area produced vegetables for Sydney. Chinese returning from the goldfields began market gardening on leases of Crown land. Large Chinese market gardens located in Wassell Street ceased operation in the late 1950s. The last market gardens were closed in 1979 when leases were rescinded for works associated with the Housing Commission.
In 1917, the New South Wales government provided the Voluntary Workers Association with 40 acres of Crown land at Matraville. They planned to build a model garden village based on Port Sunlight in England for disabled servicemen and war widows. It was constructed between 1918 and the end of 1921.
Surrounded by a few houses and buildings and some scrubby hillocks, the site was an elevated sandy wasteland on the La Perouse tram line along Anzac Parade. Amenities in the village were inadequate. Only 93 of the 170 planned cottages were built. In the early 1970s, the settlement was transferred to the Housing Commission. The Soldiers' Garden Village was replaced by 440 Housing Commission flats. Only one home and the public school, opened in 1927, survived the demolition.
Matraville Memorial Park is in memory of Matraville Garden Village. Foundation stones of the cottages, erected by the Voluntary Workers Association, and the donation of cottages by the Tattersalls Club and others are commemorated within the park. A plaque on the front fence of a house on Anzac Parade acknowledges the donation of 15 cottages by the Tattersalls Club.
The Star Drive-In opened in 1958. It was renamed Skyline Matraville Drive-In before closing in 1984.
The first house in the Chifley area was Bunurong House, built in 1825 by ex-convict John Brown. The site of the house eventually became Bunurong Power Station.
In 1924, a 117-acre site for a power station was chosen on Bunurong Road. It was constructed between 1925 and 29. The council operated a private railway which connected the power station with Botany goods yards. The railway continued to operate as a private line when the power station was taken over by the Electricity Commission. The station was decommissioned in 1973 and subsequently demolished.
In 1964, Randwick Council made the area, which had been part of southern Matraville, a separate suburb. Chifley was named after Ben Chifley, Australia's Labor Prime Minister at the end of World War II.
A large public housing complex was established in the area in the 1960s. Mirrabooka Crescent features a cluster of public housing units.
Randwick Council honoured long-serving local doctor Cecil Walters with the naming of Dr Walters Park in the newly formed suburb of Chifley. Dr Walters was Prince Henry Hospital's former medical superintendent and an expert on infectious diseases.
Phillip Bay is one of the smallest suburbs in Randwick municipality. Located within it are Yarra Bay Bicentennial Park, Market Gardens, Yarra Bay House and the disused Aboriginal Evangelical Church. Beach and recreational areas are situated along Yarra Bay, part of the area occupied by Aboriginal people.
Today, visitors to the Perouse Peninsula can discover its historic sites, Indigenous heritage, nature walks, golf courses, diving and swimming spots. If you have enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com. Or visit us the first Saturday of every month from 1:30 to 4:30 at 187 Princess Highway, St. Peters.